it's not so much gold going up, it's actually the dollar going down.
Yeah.
But the real danger is that when residents in America begin to realize that it's their dollar going down, not gold going up, and therefore they should dispose of their dollars quite rapidly. But I think even without that action, even before that happens, the distortions which have accumulated really over the last 50 years of fiat dollars, with all these dollars, euro dollars and all the rest of it accumulating outside America, this, I think, is potentially a very rapid collapse. And it could happen. It could happen almost at any moment. I mean, it really could.
Gold prices edged up on Friday as a rally in the U.S. dollar and Treasury yields stalled, but was on track for monthly and quarterly declines on increased hopes that the U.S. Federal Reserve would keep interest rates higher for longer. As U.S. Treasury yields and the dollar both declined on Friday ahead of the August core personal consumption expenditures (PCE) index release, the real danger, as pointed out by Alasdair Macleod, lies not in gold's value increasing, but in the value of the dollar decreasing. He warns that as Americans become aware of the dollar's depreciation, they may quickly divest themselves of it, potentially triggering a rapid devaluation. Despite these warnings, many, especially on Wall Street, struggle to envision a world where the dollar isn't dominant, making it challenging to grasp potential geopolitical shifts that could destabilize the currency. Even prominent figures like Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen defended the dollar's global prominence, highlighting the difficulty in finding viable replacements for a currency that has long dominated international trade. According to Alasdair, the stability of the ruble, much like currencies such as the US dollar, Australian dollar, or the pound, depends on the confidence placed in its reliability. However, the ruble faces skepticism in Western financial markets primarily due to negative perceptions of Russia, even when Russia's trade situation seems favorable. Russia has significantly raised its inflation forecast for the next 2 years. According to macroeconomic forecasts prepared by the Economy Ministry, it expects a much weaker ruble rate against the US dollar. Alasdair suggests that Putin might contemplate anchoring the ruble to a gold standard to address this challenge. This move could bolster confidence in the ruble's stability and potentially mitigate the negative perceptions surrounding it. We will now bring you clips from Alasdair Macleod's interview with As Good as Gold Australia. But before we do, if you want more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Anyone, say, in Wall Street knows that the dollar has been the king currency forever, as far as they're concerned. They cannot conceive of a world where that is not the case. So they dismiss it immediately. I mean, I've got friends in America, even sort of Austrian economists who find it quite hard to understand the geopolitical situation and how that is shifting and how that is, tipping the dollar into a potential crisis on its own. I mean, like Janet Yellen said when she was in China on this very question, she said, well, roughly 90% of world trade is settled in dollars. That's never going to change.
Yeah. Okay.
You can see the level of belief is so entrenched. Most people believe that the value of a currency is driven against other currencies by its trade surplus or trade deficit. And because Russia, with its energy, has a trade surplus, and because it is now driving energy prices upwards, the assumption is that that will be good for the ruble. That is not necessarily the case. The problem that the ruble has is that it is a fiat currency, just like the dollar, just like the Australian dollar, just like the pound. And it depends entirely for its value on the faith in that currency, not on its balance of trade. The balance of trade will have an influence, if you like, of some sort. But the overriding point is that if nobody has any faith in the currency, then it has no value. It's actually as simple as that. And the problem the Russians have is that in Western financial markets, which basically are the world's financial markets, there is absolutely no faith in the ruble at all, no faith in Russia. All the propaganda is against Russia, etc. And even if it was deemed, politically correct by a major player in America to acquire a position in rubles, which I can assure you it is not politically correct at all, they wouldn't do it. So basically, the situation, I think, is that if you drive up, which is what the Russians are doing in connection with the Saudis, if you drive up the price of oil, you will create a destabilizing position for the dollar. Now, that is, you don't need to be the brain of anywhere to work that one out. But if you destabilize the dollar, you're destabilizing the major fiat currency. And the destabilization factor for those which have very little credibility in Western currencies is going to be even greater. What Putin is going to have to do is to stabilize the currency. And this is why I think it is inevitable that his energy policy is going to lead to the ruble going on to a gold standard. And the other thing is that, going back to what I was saying about the dollar and rising bond yields, bringing about a bear market, triggering portfolio liquidation, and tending towards a collapse of the dollar, the other aspect of this is that both Russia and China must protect themselves in those circumstances. So this could hurry the process quite rapidly. And it might indeed accelerate the decline of the dollar at that stage, because you've then got an escape route out of the fiat currency system, which is really what the dollar is all about.
Central bank gold purchases reached a new record in the first half of this year, a pattern that likely continued in the third quarter, led by China. Alasdair believes that the trend of central banks acquiring gold is primarily observed in Asian and East European countries, with Russia and China being notable players. However, he distinguishes this trend from the central bank digital currency, CBDC narrative in Western countries. In the West, it's driven by the Western banking cartel's attempt to respond to the apparent challenges facing traditional currencies. They believe gaining more control over currency usage will safeguard its value or control its gradual decline, typically at a rate of 2%, which they might even increase to 3%. This desire for control seems to be their primary response, rather than reevaluating the root problem, which Alasdair identifies as their attempts to control the economy. Even the Bank of England, in its exploration of central bank digital currencies, has adjusted its model to introduce these digital currencies alongside existing currencies like the sterling. However, managing individual and business accounts would still be left to commercial banks. This practical approach highlights the challenges and complexities associated with implementing CBDCs. Let's get into the interview.
The central banks acquiring gold are mainly Asian or East European, some from elsewhere around the world. More in the sort of Russia-China camp, as it were. There are also some of the Central European countries like Poland and Croatia and so on. They've been adding to their gold position as well. Singapore is an interesting one. They really have ramped up their gold reserves, relative to their population. That I think is one story. I think the CBD story is a completely different story. And that is being driven really, I think, by the Western banking cartels, central banking cartels, attempt to respond to the obvious problems that fiat currencies are beginning to face. They seem to think that, all they need to do is have greater control over how the currency is used in order to protect its value, or to be able to control its value, so that it declines at an average rate of 2% per year, which is the mandated target, which they might increase to 3% or even 4%. Anyway, that I think is the background to their thinking. They naturally seem to embrace the idea of greater and greater control to deal with the problem, rather than standing back and understanding that the problem is their attempts to control things, if you see what I mean. So, their denial of free markets. If they accepted free markets, then this wouldn't be a problem. But equally, there is a problem that in order to get from where we are in the West with this sort of control freakery back to thinking, okay, we've got to actually stop regulating, we've got to rescind regulations, we've got to balance our budgets, we've got to give freedom back to people in order that our economy can develop the taxes and all the rest of it so that the state can operate alongside it as a safety net, whatever, but not interfere in the economy. I mean, to get back to that classic position is virtually impossible in the bureaucratic mind. It goes completely against what bureaucrats, even understand. It goes against the raison d'etre for their very existence. So they cannot think that way. And if you put on top of that the sort of Keynesian idea that, governments have a role in intervening in the economy to, stop recessions. It's been disproved time and time again that this actually works. But, they still insist on, well, the answer is we didn't do it hard enough, So you've got this attitude, and it's that attitude that's driving the CBDC thing, which is actually, in terms of the research and all the rest of it, is being centered in the Bank of Central Banks, surprise, surprise, the Bank of International Settlements. And you have that, this guy Carstensen telling us how proud he is that this was going to give the central banks the means to control everything. The rest of us who are actually just ordinary people thinking, well, hold on a minute. This is not something I can, take away my freedom and all the rest of it. I mean, we know governments take away our freedom all the time, but this is just a step too far. And it's interesting that the Bank of England produced a paper on this, a white paper. And in that paper, it modified the CBDC thing insofar as it changed the model to one whereby these would be issued alongside sterling, but the Bank of England wouldn't operate bank accounts for individuals and businesses in the economy. That would be in the hands of the commercial banks. Now, this, I think, is actually one of the practical problems with the CBDC.
While the dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency has been unchallenged for decades, cracks are beginning to emerge. A weaker dollar is expected to drive up the price of gold due to increased demand. What are the potential geopolitical shifts that could destabilize the US dollar? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.